Welcome back to 50/50. I'm so happy to have Kim Lancer with me today. And do you know what, Kim? I always have a feeling before people come in. I go, how do I feel about having this guest? And you know what I thought about you? It's such a compliment. I thought, oh, great. I'll just be able to relax because I can totally trust that Kim's going to look after me and be a great guest. And do you know when I do research now when I have a podcast, so I did a little bit of research on you and looked on LinkedIn, and I was looking at your references on LinkedIn and what people have said about you, right? And people write a nice reference on LinkedIn. But the thing I really noticed about yours was they said the things that I know about you. So we've met twice before. We've had a nice couple of coffees together, but not a very long history together, right? You've just been a lovely person that I've been able to meet in my life, and very grateful for that. But when I read these references from people that you've worked with over the years, they were talking about the part of you that I have met, so engaged, bubbly, caring, all the things I've met. And then one of the things I noticed was that when most of them comment on the amount of preparation that you will do for a session, how fully invested and committed you are to understanding someone's problem from the correct angle, it was a real thing I noticed. I was like, wow, no wonder I had the feeling I can look after this is going to be fine, that I've got Kim, because you look after things, right?
Yeah.
And clients.
Yeah, definitely. I suppose that's a part of caring. It's funny, I was just thinking, did I prep for today in the same way? I was like, no. But the same ethos of, understanding someone is still there for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's been so nice to meet you. So I'm trying to think, when did we first decide to have coffee? Had we run into one another at one of the speaking things we do, and then we said we never got to meet? Was it that we were doing Women in Leadership together but weren't doing it together, and then said, come on, let's have a coffee?
Yeah. Well, I reached out because remember when I saw you at I saw you the year before. So we were both speaking at Women in Leadership.
Yes.
When I saw you last year, which is what I do anyway, and I really love somebody. I remember I thought you were so funny, and I'm fascinated with people who are really funny because I think I'm fun, joyful, but not quite funny. So I was like, oh, this is such a good example of someone being very true is what I remembered.
Yes.
Like very true watching you. Very funny. And then I beeline to meet you, but you're already talking to someone else. So that's what I do. So that's how I feel like I collect people. Like I meet other people that I feel great energy from, and I definitely want to have coffee with them.
Yes.
So fast forward, that actually went a year, didn't it? And then magically your name and my name, same thing. And then I was like, right, now we have to meet. Yeah.
We got to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, how lovely is that? That's been a real benefit for me of particularly doing the speaking, but then also this in terms of, I wonder who I'd like to have on the podcast. But it's such a delight. Like, I remember walking into that coffee shop. We met in Subi, and I walked in the coffee shop and I said, hi, Kim, and we sat down and started talking. I was like, this is so fantastic. This woman's so easy to love. And just had a super nice time,
Yeah,
right?
it was easy, wasn't it? It was
really
lovely.
easy. Really easy.
I feel like sometimes when you can go deep with people quickly, but you're not, I don't know, there's not a set plan, you're just following your heart as it goes, then I think about this with women too, like magical things happen in these moments and it's not perfectly prepped or curated, it just does happen. You just provide space for it. So that happens. So obviously both of us are in good space for it too, and then it works.
Yes. And I mentioned to you before we started today, one of the things that you've provided for me very quickly is I met you in a real part of my journey and expansion into doing the podcast and potentially wanting to write, and so very joyful and open, but also very vulnerable, and big stuff was coming up for me. So, the first time we met, I remember us having a very nice conversation, and I sort of felt more stable and together that day. But I remember the second time we met, which wasn't long ago, I was really in it. I'd had realizations around self-esteem issues and stuff I was trying to work through, and I hadn't worked through it. And one of the things I think is testament to you is that I could be with you and you were able to hold that space, and I didn't leave feeling like, oh, I'm dead to Kim now.
Yeah.
When you with some people you feel like, oh, I should not have said that.
Yeah, I shouldn't have disclosed that. Yeah.
It's not going to go well.
Yeah.
But it's testament to you that I felt, which I very rarely feel safe walking away because of my own concerns, nothing to do with the person, But it's testament to you that I walked away and thought, Kim will be all right with that.
Yeah.
She knows I'm a moving feast.
Yeah, definitely.
This will be awesome.
And actually very relevant for me, because I think if you're a coach or a leader, you do keynotes or you're in front of people, you're in some way you're on a pedestal.
Yes.
Like in some way.
Yes.
And, you know, I just realised in the last few years, it's difficult to give that pedestal away.
Yes.
Like it is. And yet I have my own needs and ups, downs, and everything isn't perfect. So that, like, the day that you're feeling great versus the day that you're a bit more nervous, so helpful to have somebody and to share it and let the pedestal go.
Oh, yeah. That makes so much sense in so many different angles, because depending on how you came up through your journey to be a speaker or a coach or whatever, sometimes that's purely an act of love. Sometimes for most of us it's a combination of love and ego, or love and what we've been celebrated for. So then, you know, I've shared on here, sometimes I'm like, oh dear, if I share X, Y or Z, will people want me to speak, or will they want me to coach? Or, you know, it's been really challenging, but the pull to keep doing it when it feels like, for me, because it feels so much my thing, share what's really happening and what I'm learning from the wise people of the world. Because that calling hasn't shifted, I've had to keep challenging the vulnerable. But it's no joke. Like I said, I think I said to Danielle last week when we were talking, I said, a lot of people will share historically what's worried them that they're now over. But to go, I had a towel on my head, Kim. I was on LinkedIn a couple of weeks ago going, I'm not feeling great. No makeup, towel on my head. I had half a dozen separate people in my private and business life contact me with an "Are you okay?" And I said to Danielle, I think we've reached the boundary of what I can share without alarming people.
You don't know until you go there, right? Because it's all an experiment.
I found out. Okay. And actually it's so funny that you said it's an experiment, because that's literally what happened. I thought, I'm so glad I did that, because I found the line. I do not want people distressed on my behalf. I don't want people having to do welfare checks on me. Like, you know when someone puts on Facebook, worst day ever, because they want all the questions?
Yes.
I was like, oh, no, I'm not that person.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's just dial it back a bit. A little bit of lippy, maybe the hair out of the towel. I can still say I'm not great, but not having to, you know, answer people's concerns. So you and I have spoken about before, because of your history, particularly being in America, I could spend the whole time together talking about that, because it just couldn't feel more fabulous, more exciting, more that if I could live two lives at once, I would have lived yours as well, you know, like I will want to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure.
Then we've got husbands and babies, also lovely topic. Then we've got the business that you run and run all over the shop, and it's just wonderful. And then the piece that you've helped me with and you have passion around is confidence, and particularly I'd say confidence in women. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
okay.
Definitely.
Where do you want to start?
Oh, I was going to go you first. It was already on the tip of my tongue.
When we met each other, we kept saying, what do you need? What do you need?
Yeah.
Yeah. Where do you want to start? Otherwise, I can tell you where I want to start.
Okay. I'll be led this time.
You sure?
Yeah.
All right. I have to start in the US. You just have to kind of indulge me.
Yeah.
So when I was doing my research, I was on LinkedIn and I had a look at your different roles. Now, you did a bachelor of, now yours I think was a Bachelor of Arts, was it, in marketing and journalism. You did it at Curtin, and it let me know how much younger than me you are, because our years when you were there.
Oh, yeah.
Did you do it as a young person?
Yes. I know that I finished in 2000.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
You young thing, you.
Yeah.
What happened then? Did you go straight overseas? Did you spend... Are you from Perth?
I did. Yeah, I'm from Perth.
Okay.
What happened just before then is I lived in Holland for a year. And I'm sure that set up a different, trajectory for me, because that's the first moment I remember that people lived so differently, and things that were normal here weren't normal there, and vice versa. So that really stuck. And also... I went to this tiny town where you didn't know anyone and you start from scratch and nobody speaks English. Oh, they do speak fairly good English in different places, but you learn a new language.
Yes.
So I had that year, which would have escalated this travel bug. So I came back did uni, and then I finished in December, and then I'd moved to London in March.
Oh, come on.
And in between those 3 years, each of, in uni you get those 3-month breaks.
Yes.
Each of those breaks I went away by myself. So I did 3 months around Australia, 3 months around Europe. So by the time I'd finished, I was like, it's definitely happening.
Let's go.
Yeah.
So when you were doing these amazing things, I also did interesting and brave things. But for me, it was really brave because I was very anxious and not very secure, not very confident. Did you always have it? Like if your mum was to describe you, would she say, oh, Kim was always a little firecracker? Or was it more something you learnt over time?
I think she would definitely say, would it be firecracker? Probably confident.
Yes.
Yeah, like a little leader, a little different. Like standing in your own space, even though lots of people weren't standing with me. That sort of,
how wonderful.
Something like that.
That's so cool.
I'm sure sports helped that. But I do remember being very driven. Yeah, just, just very motivated or something.
Yes.
So, the school clubs, everyone has a different demeanour when they're back at,
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm on the journalism club and I'm doing amnesty and environment, all those nerdy things.
Yeah, cool.
Like that, yeah.
Cool, but owning it and loving it.
But owning it.
Yeah.
Because I did remember later on that I sort of went through a religious period.
Yes.
Yeah, from just not ideal in popularity stakes, year 10 to year 12.
Yes.
It's like forever ago.
Yes.
But I remember wanting to speak about it and like being at the school assembly in year 12 and saying, right, I want to celebrate Easter, and then going up in front of the whole class. And now I was like, why would you do that? That would be suicide at that moment. So I obviously feel things deeply. So when I deeply believe,
yes,
I want to share and talk about it. And maybe I didn't mind as much. I was like, this is how we're doing it.
That's extraordinary.
So my mum's very strong.
Is she?
I do wonder if, and she walks a very strong path, I feel like. So you never know where you get things from.
Yeah,
but sometimes
right.
I'm like, yeah, and I do remember, things at school, when some mums are scared of saying things to teachers or to this. I always remember my mum had messaging around, no, we don't care what people think. Like, I'm going to stand up for you, or I'm going to say this. Or so we definitely grew up with that.
Yeah, how awesome.
Yeah.
How awesome. Yeah, and then the springboard of that you're absolutely right, it was ludicrous to do that in year 12.
Yeah.
So that shows, right, that shows how wonderful. So you're like, no, I feel about this, I'm going to share about it, I'm able to share about it, I've got this strong mother who's going to support me and I've learnt from. And then you go, now I can see the world is there, off I go.
Yeah.
So it was London first.
The one-way ticket.
Yes.
Yeah. Which ended up being 6 years.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, how long was London?
Yeah. And, went with a boyfriend, didn't come back with one.
Yes, that's right. Sometimes we do it that way, sometimes we do it the opposite.
Yeah, but I think that was a 7-year relationship, so that was a long period of time.
Oh, yeah, that's really long.
And I arrived in London very determined to be a journalist.
Okay, because I was going to ask, marketing and journalism. Yeah. I was like, okay, which was the one? So it was journalism.
Yeah, it was definitely journalism because in my mind, when I was picking it, it was a field that meant you were really curious about people. So you were going to help them because it's all about truth, and you're listening to their stories. So I actually remember when I came back from Holland, I didn't know what I wanted to study, but I had this year of reflection and I started going back to what are things you naturally like. And, I was the person that would make, in the friendship group, you're the caring one, you ask all the questions, you support them.
Yes.
So I aligned that to journalism at the time. And of course, when you move to a new city when you're, I don't know, 22, 20.
Yeah.
No, 20, right?
I was going to say,
you think that the news station is just waiting for you, and they're like, "Oh, you graduated? Come on over here and present."
We're so happy
that's exactly what you think. Like I made a doco on the way over. I'm like, well, that's going out to the world. And like most people who move to London, the reality is you start temping straight away because you need experience with something.
Yeah.
So you just do anything and temp.
Yes.
Whilst you're trying to get some sort of lead in journalism.
Okay.
So I did both.
Okay.
I started investment banking like on the trading floor, which actually set up this beautiful pathway, different pathway, which I didn't know. And I was a casual at Sky News.
Oh, come on.
And I'd done work experience here. So that's right. Channel 7, Channel 9. This feels so long ago, so I don't
Still exist,
I don't know
though.
if it's as interesting. But yeah, exactly. They still know. But remember the shark attack? Like forever ago in Cottesloe Beach.
Yeah.
I was doing work experience like around that time. And that was the day that I did work experience, which actually probably set up a pathway of me questioning journalism as well. And I'm sure that's linked to finding, well, how can I be curious and supportive and truth? Well, it's actually in leadership development and train, not this piece. Because the day the shark attack happened, the newsroom was really happy. Like they were very, like this was the biggest news. And contextually, I understand that, you know, in a way. But that wasn't that wasn't great to see.
If you think, the way I think about media, I have a very, very strong negative opinion around media, and if it bleeds, it leads, right? Because we are marinated in the worst possible thing we could be at a particular time.
Yeah.
There might be one kitten story after the weather. It's so skewed negative. Not question. Well, that's life. You know, my dad would say, well, that's life. Things happen. And I go, well, actually, as human beings, we're not meant to be marinated in every story from every corner of the globe. That's not how we haven't evolved very far from cave people, let alone being able to manage that someone's died in Prague of a horrible, right? So I think the media has a massive responsibility. This is traditionally, now of course media is now this confused and algorithmic and it's long gone largely. But yeah, that was long enough ago that you would have still been able to hope that journalism could be a good thing.
Yeah.
But then you saw it at its ugliest and went, hang on.
Yeah, I did only like a sprinkling, I suppose, here. Then while I was at the investment bank, you know, I loved the team. In fact, my very first boss is coming to stay with me in January. He texted me during the week from like years ago. So that was a wonderful experience, and that got me into leadership development, so I couldn't be more grateful for those steps. On the other pathway, so I was working at the bank 5 days, and then Saturday, Sunday I would do 12-hour shifts, 8 to 8, being a runner, which is basically, if you're allowed to say it, like a shit kicker. Yeah. Like you're running around in the newsroom. And then I graduated to a guest getter. So, you know, when you watch the news on the hour, every hour, there's always an expert that comes in to speak about the latest tragedy in the news.
Yes.
That's a high intensity, high pressure job. That's what I did Saturday, Sundays. So with those two experiences, I found my place in, I want to be recruiting people first, which is, you know, the graduates and going to all the unis in London.
Yes.
And talking about what my company can do. And then that naturally was like, well, how could you develop them and stay with them? Because if you recruit, you just meet them once. If you actually train, of course, investment banks have amazing graduate training. You stay with people.
Yes.
And that's related to US.
I was going to say, is
the
that
pathway that got me over. Yeah. So 6 years in London, completely amazing. Towards the end, I had a holiday in New York, loved it. I thought London was the centre of the world. I mean, I'm sure lots of people love it. And I thought it was 24/7. Went to New York for a weekend, was like, oh my gosh, this is 24/7.
Wow.
And loved the energy and all the options, and I loved theatre ballet. So that was just like off the charts what you could do culturally, and just so fun. Everything about it was so fun. And I went back straight away and was like, right, I want to transfer.
Okay.
And that period I remember took 9 months. Like you had to wait for somebody to move.
Okay.
You know, I was trying to get all the connections, and then I moved across. And I had 9 years in New York.
Yes.
Fell in love with a gentleman from Philadelphia and moved into Philadelphia for 2 years.
Okay.
So I feel like I spent my 20s in London.
Yes.
Spent my 30s in New York, and then came back home in my 40s.
Oh, come on.
As it happens. Yeah.
Oh, it's so, like, for me personally, and I'm sure I'm not alone, I go, like, imagine it's just such a wonderful idea to spend time in. For me, I know London and have lived in London, and I agree, London's great. Now, I've never been to New York, as you and I have talked about, so I've got this mystical vision, and I can feel it viscerally when you talk about it. I'm like, oh, yes, indeed, that sounds excellent. So you were a staff member in London, and then started as a staff member in New York, and then how did your personal work grow out of that? Like, where was the steps that went from I'm an employee for X business to I run my own show?
Oh, okay, that piece.
Yeah.
When did that start? So I was building my craft, you know, in New York. So I'd been in leadership development for just with these amazing leaders who had PhDs and everything. So I was absorbing a lot of the knowledge at the bank and really enjoying that, and then also getting promoted along the way.
Yes.
So I ended up running a department, and then I feel like I learned all the keys. So instructional design, I got my coaching accreditation. I saw how you consult, how you do needs, and that felt really important to me because lots of people sometimes get it through study initially.
Yes.
Whereas leadership development was a field that was like, oh, you may have to be a psychologist. That's not as valued, I would say, in the US, but you may have to do something.
Yes.
And so I was learning it by doing it as well as this. So loved that. Then I thought, because I was in, 40,000 people organization.
Yes.
So you're coaching internally, but there's only a certain amount because you can imagine all the stakeholder engagement,
Yes.
all the strategy.
Yes.
And you're not in front of the room, which you've been doing a lot of. So then I moved to a company and I was with them for 5 years. And that was a part, again, of moving and enhancing my skill set. And that company, again, amazing. I actually just saw the partner when I went back to New York. It was so fun to see him and be like, thank you. I'm 6 years in, and if I didn't have that learning from you, how would I have got here?
Oh, wow.
That was, So they were a private company. They had incredible clients, and every day we trained like thousands of times, all of the topics. So again, I thought that was incredible. And I think towards the end, and Tamara, I always had a feeling that I would come back home. I never thought I would stay in New York. I'd stay internationally.
Okay.
I thought I'd come back home and I'd set up a business.
Yes.
I'd do something like entrepreneurial.
Yes.
But I wasn't sure when. And I just thought when I miss home enough.
Yes.
And that's when I'll know.
Okay.
So towards the end of, working at this consulting training company, I could feel, okay, that's enough of New York. I really want to be home. I want to be with my family and my brother around the corner. And then I started dreaming about, I'm going to set it up, a leadership development company with everything I've learned. And it's the way that I deeply believe in.
Yes.
So I took a bit from London, a bit from these two different experiences in New York. And I didn't think, of course, like everything, all the companies had it right. I thought the key to all of it is to actually look at confidence. And that was, by that time, I kept coaching so many people where I was like, you're not just trying to learn a tactical negotiation skill.
Yes.
I'm actually helping you feel more confident about yourself. That is the key to you unlocking your skill. And I just kept testing that. And then I would have all these Fortune 100 companies. And I was like, wow, it's still the same, whether you're really junior or really senior. And, of course, I was coaching more senior people then. So, So then I went away to a Caribbean island for a weekend, got my journal because I'm a massive journaler, and went, right, I'm going to dream about all the things that are in my heart that I believe in, that I've seen, and that's what's going to be the core of the dream. And that's when I came up with the Tall Poppies Leadership name too.
Yeah, I love that
I'm going to call it that. Then we set it up in the US and then moved back.
Yeah. So what I can hear from what you're saying is a couple of things. I completely agree with you, and I'm now in my own life seeing the truth around what you say around the access confidence can give. So I'll say more about that in a moment. The other thing I can hear is a little bit like those references on LinkedIn when they were talking about the quality of your work. I can really hear what you collected, how you collected it, and the alignment and commitment to your craft. Like you are who you promise to be, right? And it's no joke. It's not like, oh, I've fallen into this thing and let me talk to you. It's brick by brick, thought by thought, company by company, what is going to make me be able to make the biggest difference to people. And on the confidence piece, through the things I've been doing recently, and also when I talk to clients, we talk about some elements of how the brain works in our limbic system and all the rest. And, when we're in survival mode, it's not a very articulate mode. It's not a very nuanced mode. It's I need to survive this. And one of the things we talk about is, to have a useful conversation, both people need to feel an element of safety, right? Because otherwise we're like, I need to survive you. I'm not, right? So there's that sort of basic human element. And then when I think of the work I've recently been doing and Danielle and I have been talking about, the access to what is impeding the confidence and realising what's getting in the way and becoming free of that, my creativity has come forth.
Yeah.
Because it's like, oh, that's what it was. Now I'm going to do whatever I'm going to do.
Yeah.
Because there's the space that wasn't there before.
Yeah, you get to play, don't you?
Yeah.
You allow yourself first and then you therefore play.
Yes.
Which I think is just a central part of us as well.
Yes.
You know, like playing and having fun and being silly. That's actually what drew me to you. I remember thinking like, oh, she's really having fun.
Yeah.
And even at the time, because I'm so driven and like, you know, growth, I feel like, oh, I can lose my bit of fun sometimes.
Yeah.
And yet I remember like this whole, like London, New York, I feel like, not just me, I feel like we're all allowed to and should be fun.
Yes.
And we get to incorporate some of that play. And I'm sure that's why so much of the play is in the sort of workshops and the things that we do, because I'm like, that's when people feel things, remember things, use things, and it's all related to business.
Yes.
I just feel like we're in this polished world that, not everyone accepts it when it's positioned like that. So it's about results, but how to get to results is about these core elements of confidence and unlocking and
Yes, and fun and laughter. And we know the data shows when people are having fun, they do learn better.
Yeah.
They do retain it better. And even though I'm saying it in quite a basic way, it does make sense to me that if your survival element's running, it's so distracting and so energy absorbing and so not allowing one to be present that if people can laugh or if people can do an activity and enjoy it or can feel safe in the room, there's this much brain, not this much brain.
Yeah.
And I don't know why we've ongoingly been committed in the Western world around, business has to be serious, life has to be serious. I'm not sure why. I spoke to Peter Slocum some weeks ago, and I said, I quite often express my fury to people. You may or may not escape that. It won't be directed at you. And I said to Peter, some of the things corporations do, they just don't look after their people. They don't come from compassion. They're not thoughtful. And she made the comment, and I'll be paraphrasing. She said, look, it's a period in time, and I feel like we will continue to develop. Exactly like sporting clubs have changed their culture and their approach.
Yeah.
The corporate world will also do it. We just haven't got there yet. Or some have, but it's rare.
I agree, because when I think about, working on the trading floor, we were trying to have sessions on emotional intelligence. Something, and at the time it was like, absolutely not, no relevance, no business connection there. And then a little bit later it was like, oh, what about the concept of mindset coaching, in the US? That was new. Then athletes were focused on, actually, it's not all about my capability. It's about my state of mind. So I saw that shift over sort of 15 years. Now mental health, well-being.
Yes.
Like, it'll only get more and more, ideally, to a place. This is what I would love, where everyone thinks all the time. So you're, the CEO, this level, whatever. They're constantly thinking about self-care. They're thinking about recharging strategies. They're not just pushing through.
Yes.
And the way they deal, therefore, with confidence or things that get in the way.
Yes.
Like confidence doesn't get in the way. Self-doubt gets in the way.
That's
comparison, imposter syndrome, blah, blah, blah. All these things. They are navigating it by being intentional and proactive.
Yes.
So recharge, these are all the things that we don't talk about with performance in the same way. But it's, anyway, the needle's moving, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's good to hear it from you as well, because you would be on the pulse of this, because you work both in Australia and still work in the US as well, which of course I also love. I'm like, oh, I might come next time with you, Kim. And you're like, we haven't agreed on that at all. I'm like, but it'll be fine. I'm sure I'll be helpful.
You'll love it.
I could be your runner.
Yeah, there you go.
That's fine. But you've got both elements running. Then the name is fantastic, right? Because, of course, one of the things culturally in Australia is the idea of don't be a tall poppy. So here it symbolises, for me, and correct me if I'm wrong, it symbolises the very mission you're on, like you can stand up, right? I think that's literally some of the language you use, right?
Yeah, we use stand tall.
Stand tall, there you go.
Step into your power.
And you gave me this awesome present, which I'm going to put on my Mercedes keyring. They're going to be future sponsors. I don't know yet, but and it's my little Wonder Woman keychain. It's so cool. Like, I will feel empowered when I see that. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So you use this language perfect for Australia and probably quite mysterious in the US.
Yes.
It's not a thing there, is it,
No,
that language?
it isn't. And that's the other thing I noticed. I'm in the UK and, they don't have tall poppy syndrome, which, of course, I've grown up with and experienced. And then I go and live somewhere else and they don't have it in Holland and they don't have it in the US. So that makes you question, well, is it like a cultural – is that a healthy, supportive cultural influence? No. And what else might they have somewhere else? Because it doesn't mean it's better.
Yeah.
So when I saw that, so two things. Yes, I explained to the US, hey, there are external forces in Australia that kind of squish our confidence.
Yes.
And they tell us, we should all be the same.
Yes.
I'm like, absolutely not. Like, how would you actually figure out what you wanted in life or even feel good enough to ask for it if you're constantly like, well, don't celebrate and don't stand up and don't tell anyone and don't be different. Like, very, very negative. That said, there's different forces in different countries and around the world. And I think quite simply they're internal. I know they're internal.
Yes.
That's, isn't it ridiculous that we've got the system internally in any country in the world that just constantly is like self-doubt?
Yes.
Like, do you really?
Yes.
Performance anxiety?
Yes.
Like, all of it built in.
Fit in.
So
you and I were talking about how it shows up in the US. So I have a very limited experience of the US, couple of colleagues from the US over the years, couple of visits to the US. And for me as an Australian, the cultural element I see in the US is that they're far better at celebrating success. I feel like their culture would be a very tough one. That's my experience as an external person of, limited holidays, parental leave not being at the same level. Definitely for a lot of people, healthcare and money seems to be a terrible thing. And then achievement seems to be almost demanded. So this is all external. So you go, no, it's not like that at all, Tamara.
No, I think that's fair as a generalisation.
It feels like you've got to do well, you've got to get into the right college. You can celebrate when you do well, but almost the flip side of here, if you don't do well, Bob's not doing well either, easy. There you have to do well, but when you do well, people will celebrate you. So for me, it's kind of the yin and yang of the two. One's got great benefit and hardness, and one's got great not benefit but softness. Yeah. I'm very ordinary. Next person goes, so am I.
Yeah.
We'll be friends.
Exactly. Yeah. Neither of you are feeling great about yourself.
No,
right?
we're terrible.
And some of that is down to numbers, because I think how lucky we are in this weird way. There's 26 million of us. In the US, you're like 250 to 300. So you have to stand out more in the US. Just numerically, immediately.
True.
And you have a culture of, business is very important and versus personal second. Again, generalization, but the high performers are definitely in big cities as well, because they're all drawn there because that's where all the opportunities are.
Yes.
The way I experience the US, which, I love, is also like literally the first week that I got there, I went into a bar, a guy came up and he said hello to me, and then he slid his card across, and whilst he looked at me and said, I've got a Harvard MBA.
That's
you can imagine how I never had that. Not in nobody would ever consider doing that in London, right? And then he gives me his number, so I'm still like, people talk to you randomly. I'm feeling flattered and pretty, I'm sure, but why'd you just tell me you got an MBA? Yeah. So weird, right? Yeah. Then he gives me, and I'm also like, well, we could talk now. He says, call me. Yeah. And again, I was thinking, well, what about now?
Yeah, you're right here.
Even though it's still weird. So it sets up that sense of I think there's generally, I'm aware of generalizations, more bravado, more let me put up more polish and tell you how great I am.
Yes.
Because there's more people to compete against.
Yes. Yeah, that makes actually a lot of sense. Go on with what you're about to say.
And so, but with all of it, irregardless of the culture, there's this internal thing that's constantly taking away from you feeling good.
Yeah.
And I just feel like, well, if you knew something was self-sabotaging you, you go to, I don't know, pump up a tire or something and there's one hole, but you didn't know about the other hole. Yeah. You just keep pumping and pumping and you think it was you. Yeah. And that's what people think all levels of leadership and coaching. It's always that it's them that has self-doubt.
Yes.
Or why can't they just move on? Why can't they focus on their performance?
Yes.
Why do we always focus on our gaps?
Yes.
So even after this, you and I are naturally going to think of what we could have said and could have done better.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So knowing that, if you really had data that will happen naturally, then you could feel more confident because we wouldn't sweat it. We'd be like, oh, well, it was good enough.
Yes.
And actually that's just my internal brain that's trying to mess with me.
Yes.
So I feel really drawn to tell everyone about, let's just intentionally protect our confidence.
Yes.
Because culture isn't, and society isn't, and organisations aren't. And then I think of it as poppyitis, poppyitis around the world. So wherever you are, there's this internal, external thing, depending on, the society, it varies.
Yes.
Kind of squishing what you think you can be. That's your happiness and it's your success.
Yes.
So however you determine success.
Yes. Yeah, I love it.
And that's just not what we're put here for.
No.
Right? Like we're depending on what you believe what we're put here for, but we're put here to enjoy life and I think reach your potential, whatever that might be, or at least explore it.
Yes.
Not get scared of it and decide because you had a few negative messages that you can't do it.
Yes.
Like that, I'm like, no.
I can feel it.
Yeah.
Like, no, come on now. You can feel it, which is, I'm so glad you're on this path because you'll help so many people, including me, right? It's like, okay, so you talked about protecting one's confidence and then I really like some of the work Danielle and I have done is around this idea of not fighting with the part of you that would think something different. So, whether it be the ego or whether it be the primal self or whatever, going, I'm not good enough, whatever. Okay, I know you think that, but that's fine that you think that, but I'm going to do X, Y, or Z. So it's kind of not fighting with whether it be the societal voice or the internal voice and going, it's all right, I love you, and I'm going to talk to Kim on the podcast. You know what I mean?
Yes.
I find that softer approach to the parts of me that are trying to protect me actually quite a revelation for me because I used to just go, shut up, stop bothering me.
Yes.
And then they'd get louder because they're like, oh, my God, now what are you doing? We really haven't planned this at all, And I was speaking to Danielle very recently about having this recognition of this the young version of me, what her experience had been, and then why she was now trying to protect me 40 years later. And so for me, it's always, and I'll be interested in your thoughts on it. For me, there is an element of simplicity to the freedom. So there's an element of, okay, now I understand I've got this negative self-talk, I've got this belief system that's wonky, I can just acknowledge it and move on. I believe that's true. But for me personally, it's not quite as neat as that. I will have to often explore, well, what is that voice or what does it need? It's kind of a combination of practical, useful, applicable steps and a level of inward, a level of spiritual, a level of being with oneself. It's the combo for me that'll get me there in the end.
Yeah, that makes total sense to me. So firstly, that concept of acceptance, I'm like, yes. Like I literally picture a balloon and like I'm full of emotion or I'm full of like negativity or whatever, you must diffuse it.
Okay.
Like acceptance. It reminds me of Carl Jung's quote, what you resist persists.
Testify.
Which, definitely come back to. Like how much energy am I on, for example, for me, like don't be unhappy.
Yes.
Because I have an identification with being really positive and happy.
Yes.
And that's not to the exclusion of, and for the work that I do.
Yes.
Like this is what I believe and it's about being confident, but not to the exclusion of it's okay to sit in unhappiness, sadness, anger, somebody crossed your boundary. Like that bit, I couldn't believe more now in my life actually, and have, even in the last 2 years, the concept of sitting with emotion versus what I'm drawn to do, which is like move on, perform, do the next thing, rally.
Yes. So it sounds like you have the positive version of the self. You're like, okay, Kim, that's enough of that. Let's go. We're being positive. Whereas I'll have the negative version of that where the spiralling thought will be like, I gave the example and I often give it in training, the way I've tried to shift from thinking myself out of a problem to feeling it. So for many, many years, most of my life, I would go, I feel nervous about training. Then I'd say to myself, you've done this for 20 years. Why the hell do you feel nervous? Then I'd say to myself, don't be mean. You're nervous. And the spiral is just, at 1 minute I'm nervous and worried. And by the end of it, I'm nervous, stupid, mean. I just add, right?
Yeah.
Whereas if I'm able to go, like I love using the Thich Nhat Hanh example where he says, if you had lettuce that were dying and being eaten by snails, you wouldn't yell at the lettuce.
Yeah.
You'd get some water and remove the snails.
Yeah.
So he said, when you think of yourself, if you're anxious or like me with training, I'm nervous, if you're able to go, okay, you're nervous, all right, that's understandable.
Yeah.
Feel it,
Yeah.
and we're going to do it anyway.
Yeah.
And the ease of that versus the internal dialogue and fight around don't be this, don't be this, don't be this. You're absolutely right. It just has it last forever.
Yeah, and judgment, right? So that's behind each of the steps. And the more you might be knowledgeable about a topic, the more senior you are, the harder the judgment is as to why you're even having that question.
That's
the
right.
spiral. So I think the trick to that is, quite simply, if I said you were asking me terrible questions right now, I know the power of like, oh, I just set you on your spiral, right?
And then immediately made me go, what would I do if you said that?
So what if everybody firstly just knew, wow, why would you give all that power away? Like, this is how my brain works. I'm looking for danger. If I hear anything negative, I'm going to go next down. That's going to happen immediately.
Yes.
Now, you don't want to give that power to me at all. You want to have some sort of protection where it's like, takes you a second, by the way. It's like, it's not. So that's real, right? Now go the other way. If I'm like, wow, you look so pretty today, like just the way your hair is sitting and the curls gorgeous.
Yes.
Are you ever going to be like, pretty, please, I'm beautiful? Like, you're never going to go up, right?
No.
You're never going to go up. So let's just take that. If everybody then in thinking about doubt was like, so you get a positive comment, but you never think, you don't spiral up.
Yes.
You only ever go down. That's what I think all the time. Like, I actually think at work in this, this will probably spiral me. And I give myself a little bit of indulgence. So I've got 3 thoughts.
Okay.
Then Greg, my husband who I work with as well, we're partners, I'll text him my thought and he'll reframe it for me. So external perspective will get you in the spiral. Or I had a client once that started measuring. She's very, analytical.
Yes.
She's like, I normally have 6 thoughts down.
Oh.
And now I only maybe go 4. And I'm like, okay. So if you never get rid of the negative spiral, so I'm never going to not have self-doubt, but I'm going to be talking globally about confidence forever.
Yeah.
Then you could just be aware and more intentionally go, I'll probably have it then.
Yes.
I'll probably have it with this person.
Yes.
And to your point, I'll accept it.
Yes.
I won't use all my energy to fight it, and I definitely won't judge it.
Yeah.
So I pick up my judgments like way quicker than I used to. And I just think not resourceful, still going to do it.
Yes.
And then I think about things that you do first to offset, because otherwise all of us are walking around giving away all this power and constantly negatively going down. I'm like, why would a high performer, why would anyone do that? How are you going to get happy doing that?
Yeah, it's such a waste of time and energy. And I mean, really, I've looked at the amount of time I've spent there and it's an actual tragedy in my life. In terms of time, when I love life. I love being alive.
Yeah.
I've spent so much time on that spiral. There's a couple of things that occur to me as you say it. One is around when you said, if you had said to me you're asking terrible questions, it really gave me the sense of the power of context and the power of intention, right? Because if I was in a pre-podcast mode, just being my neurotic self and having a cup of tea, and you said, I'm really worried you're going to ask me terrible questions, I would be much faster to go, right?
Yes.
But I instantly did the role plays if you said it live on the podcast, and I thought, what would I actually do? And I thought I would stop, I'd get a shock, and then I'd stop and I'd very quickly say, what questions should I be asking?
Yeah, amazing.
Because my commitment is to you getting what you want from being here, right?
Yeah.
Does that make sense to you, that contextual piece?
But look what's behind that. There's something beautiful behind that, which is firstly, which relates to all of us, right? Same thing when I go up on a stage. If it's all about me, ego, versus really trusting that I think this message could resonate with somebody. Not everybody.
Yes.
That's a pathway I've gone on. Like, not everyone will hear this and think they need it or it resonates.
Yes.
Then you'll do it because you're like, oh, it is serving. It is about them.
Yes.
And then it relates to something else, which is like prep. Your goal, you're so clear on.
Yes.
So we obviously feel better about ourselves and are confident, everything, if you're just a bit more clear about who you are and why you're here.
Yes.
So then you can bounce quicker too, because you're like, oh, okay, let me stay curious, because it is about the other person.
Yes.
That is a real skill. And I think in business, I always think in business context, how we spend our life, there's not enough intentionality to do some of that.
Yes.
And so that's why there's such a problem with confidence in general. We have to be perfect.
Yes.
You bounce all the time.
Yes.
You have these crazy expectations.
Yes.
and you don't know that you've got this built-in machinery, like your brain, that's going against it, and then the environment is actually not naturally lifting you up.
No.
But if you could navigate, if you just were aware first, that's that know yourself piece. This is actually, this is how I came to our equation for confidence. Because I've been thinking about, like, well, after hearing all these messages forever and ever, I'm like, we just need a simple equation. We need, like, this is what everyone's talking about at all levels. So, so for me, that was not just for me, but for the themes.
Yes.
It was, you must know yourself.
Yes.
Which I feel like you just did in that example.
Yes.
And that starts with, actually, it relates to why I gave you that Wonder Woman thing. It starts with my superpowers. So if the world's set up to tell you all the mistakes and you're always looking at gaps, you have to start with, I'm a superhero. I'm a great person. I like myself.
Yes.
Like foundation.
Yes.
So there's an EQ piece there, know yourself.
Yes.
Then you have to trust yourself, because Kevin, my inner voice, is just there like, rah, built
Kevin.
in. Yeah.
Okay.
And he's messing up with all my decisions and my conviction.
Yeah. Mm.
And then you'd actually have to allow to be yourself.
Yes.
Because just because you know, oh, I'm a little bit different, and we all have our version, doesn't mean you get to embrace quirkiness with it. So those three together, for me, this is how you get to be confident. And that's what we infuse, therefore, in, working with teams. That's why I want to do it around the world. Like, what if people could just have a simple, am I knowing myself? Am I trusting myself? Am I being myself? Okay, if I could, from the beginning of my career, like, how good would it be if we had this when we were 20 or whatever, or later for our kids? I think about how am I going to teach this to Aviana immediately, my 2-year-old.
It's amazing, right? There's such an opportunity with our children. I've got so many things I want to talk about based on what you just said. I love the know yourself, trust yourself, and be yourself. Okay. Know yourself, trust yourself, be yourself. That comment that you made when we're on stage, when I talk to people about nerves around public speaking, my number one tip for them is, if you're there for the audience and your attention is on them, your nerves will go down massively, because it's not about you anymore. It's about what you're providing. It's the best thing I ever realised, and it's the most useful thing I can tell people, because of course we're nervous public speaking, what a nightmare. So that's part of that piece where, your commitment distracts you from your nerves because your heart's bigger than your fear, kind of thing. Yeah. The other thing about children, I've got this 10-year-old, and I shared a story a while ago. He was having some problems with anxiety, and that's been a very big theme in my life from a child. So I used my 50-year-old strategies to help him, and we worked on, and I was like, I don't know if this is going to work, but it's worked for me at this age. So anyway, we're going back and forth, and then about 2 weeks in, I said, oh, how's this subject, that he was worried about? And he said, what are you talking about, Mum? And I said, oh, I remember you were feeling a bit funny about X, Y, and Z. And he goes, oh, no, I don't feel that anymore. And I went, huh. And my brain split in two, and I had like this big celebration with streamers and champagne. And I was like, oh, my God, I've helped this child stop suffering with techniques I look. And then that was probably, to be truthful, it was probably about 70% that, maybe 80. 20 to 30 was the violin came out for me. I was like, oh, I've suffered. The little this head scarf and the stooped grey clothes, I was like, oh, what if someone had been able to help me at that age? Yes. So I was both delighted and devastated. I was like, far out. There's been so much time wasted. And I'm grateful I'm not dead, right? I've learned a lot and I'm still alive, and I'm really grateful. I don't feel 50. I think it's ludicrous. So I love that as well. It's like, oh, come on. It's like you're saying about the societal rules, what the stuff we're all trapped in. You hear people say, oh, you can start a new job at 35. And I go, what are you talking about? You can start a new job at 95. Yeah. That side of thing. But also when you were saying about giving up the pedestal, I think part of the reason I've said I'm meant to share about how I'm struggling and what I'm learning is just because it came to me as a thing that felt true. But the reason I'm grateful for it is I do passionately believe that we need to all become more honest about all the parts. Because what makes us all feel bad is everyone pretending they're apples. And then I hear someone like Tasha Broomhall say to me, you know, no one's apples, right? And I go, I thought everyone was apples. And she goes, no one's apples, Tamara. Like, that'll be very useful for you to get. And what you said about, which I'm going to take on, not everyone in the audience has to like me, because I've never really been able to get that. And it's time to get that, because...
And that's a hard one, because, you know, I have this total people-pleasing thing going on. And I think we're kind of taught that as well, you know, to varying degrees. So that seems the most natural thing ever. Like, if you want to take care of somebody, you want them to be happy. And, that, you know, that obviously has an extreme because it leads to avoiding conflict. And, you know, like, let me help you. I think for mums too, let me help you before me.
Yes.
Same with leaders. Let me always take care of you before me. That's a theme.
Yes.
Just that balance and how you actually navigate that. Very, very tricky.
Yeah, it's very, very tricky. And, you know, I've met people, you know, training all these years and meeting so many people, and there's some people that are very good at looking after themselves and not so good at looking after others. They're actually the happier people I know. Yeah. Because they're like, my love's great. Yeah. I don't care about you. And it's, I don't think they're the best person walking the earth, but they're having a good time. Yeah. Then you'll find the flip side. So
that's a sliding scale.
Right?
Yeah.
Then you go through right to the other end where someone's not happy at all and really, really cares about other people and has a great time. So I was thinking about this morning. I have no idea what you think. I was thinking about two people I know, one privately, one in work. They create joy and happiness wherever they go. Mm-hmm. When I was working with Danielle years ago as a trainer, I was highly anxious and concerned, and the room found me relaxed, funny, and of absolute contribution. What happens with these people that are the nicest people I know, and I don't mean grossly nice, I mean they love machines, right? But internally they have very high anxiety, very lack of self-esteem. And I was thinking about it this morning and I was like, are there some people who are a conduit of love but don't know how to stop the tap in themselves as well as going out?
Yeah.
It's like they're so great to be around, and then they'll share with me what their experience of life is, and it's torturously bad. And I have had that experience.
Because they're giving too much, you mean? Or because they're polishing it, it's other people's expectations?
They don't think they're any good. Oh. Their self-talk is vicious. Yeah. And when they talk to others, they're like an angel on earth.
Oh, right. Yes.
And I was thinking about it. It's not even,
Yeah, that is a combination.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, like you know how they always tell you about like, oh, I was so kind to somebody else, but you would never say that to yourself.
Yes.
Yeah. And isn't that a problem in itself? Like, how come it's so tricky on a world level anyway, just to feel like I'm enough?
Yeah.
Or it's enough.
Yeah.
So is that messaging when you're in a family? You know, I get curious about that. Yeah. That you haven't been told enough of how great you are.
Yeah.
Or also, I mean, there's so many other factors.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, depending on what you believe in, you've got the basic primal stuff around where animals that are meant to breed and die and make sure we've got a tribe and can eat. And I do think that runs really strongly. Yeah. I'll say to people in training or in speaking, I'll say, listen, we may as well be sitting here in furs. If you look at how slow evolution is, we've very much still got cave people brain going, I need to find food, find a cave, find a mate, stay alive long enough for that mate to be, that offspring to be well, then die. Right? Yeah. So it's very basic, but it also for me does make sense that we're going, oh, I hope Kim likes me, I hope Danielle likes me, because I've got to be part of the tribe, because I've got to live long enough to have babies with Bob and then make right? So there's that basic side. Then you've got the family stuff, which is absolutely in play in all different ways in different families. Then depending on what you believe in, I think about it like, okay, how does DNA work? Like if I think of my background, one side's full Irish, and Ireland, oh my God, you know, what have they been through? You know, between religion and potatoes, that history is big. And then I've got the other side, Scottish, German, Irish. I met a fellow in Glasgow and I lived there many years ago, and he goes, where are you from? And I said, Perth. And I always used to have to say Perth, Western Australia, because there's a Perth in Scotland. They're like, you're not from Perth. And he goes, what's your background? I said, oh, half Irish, half Scottish. And he goes, oh, and you're a redhead, you poor thing. And he goes, tell me you're not Catholic. And I went, I am. And he goes, oh, no.
Hug. You got a
He
hug?
was.
Yeah.
He was like, I'm so sorry. And I was like, me too.
Yeah, of
Thanks,
course.
buddy. I feel seen.
Yeah.
But, I don't know. I always take the more woo-woo stuff with a grain of salt. But I think it makes sense from a cellular level. There is probably very, very old stories running through all of us.
Oh, well, the way they talk about trauma is generational and things that are passed down. For me personally, I remember my mum literally in lots of different moments telling me I was special and that, we were protected and family was everything.
Yes.
And I wonder, you'll never know, right? But surely that was a part of making me feel good about myself.
Yes.
And yet you couldn't say it across like all three of us, for example, because every single child in a family has different experiences too.
They say they're brought up by a different family, each child,
exactly.
right?
And we have that when our siblings get together. We're like, what?
Who?
That's what you heard? That's what you heard? You know what I was thinking about that's helped me with not everyone will like me,
Yes.
which takes a bit, was I'm not sure if it was Oprah a few years ago, but it was explained in such a way that I was like, oh, that really makes sense with me. And this is how it played out for me as well.
Okay.
It was because we're also varied in the world and different life experiences. So whether you're positive or not, like labels, it's such a different journey. I can only influence so much of that.
Yeah.
Quite simply, my messages, just like yours, won't resonate with everyone.
Yes.
So that's a part of being liked.
Yes.
And Tall Poppies being liked, me being liked, our methodologies being liked. It's just quite simply they won't resonate with everyone.
Yes.
I can really accept that. And then underneath that, this is like leadership development and coaching. You would know that's partly because people aren't open to hear about it.
Yes.
People straight out don't agree with it. People don't have life experiences that would support that.
Yeah.
People see it in a vision and they're like, it's not nearly scientific enough or heartfelt enough for me to even contemplate accepting it.
Yes.
All of those I feel like, that would make sense. But in the beginning, so can I just tell you that bit?
Please do.
When So here I am dreaming about Tall Poppies Leadership. We're going to land in Perth and build it all,
The doors are going to open.
Exactly. And, it's about confidence in this. And that was a wonderful experience. And, you obviously work crazy hard as an entrepreneur to set it all up. But then there was a phase where, obviously, if you've done leadership development for years and years and years, you're leveraging all the books you've read, everything you've ever taught, you're using it, all these resources.
Yeah.
And then there was a little journey where I really felt like, but I know what these key themes are after seeing it myself for so long.
Yes.
And it's enough that I have seen it as a coach out of an organisation for me to create our IP and our methodology.
Got it.
That was a bit of a leap because, and I was nervous when we first started talking about it.
Yeah.
Because of course, Kevin's there. There's some society around how do you know it and prove it. And so I remember the very first time I talked about know, trust, be yourself.
Yes.
But by the way, I'd actually been talking about that in different ways. I just hadn't called it that equation.
Yes.
And I hadn't said it's mine.
Yes.
Different,
Got
right?
it.
Very vulnerable to be like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here you go. What do you reckon
you're
of
hiding
this?
behind others, like,
Right.
this leader and that leader. Yeah, it's
yeah.
all there. It's whatever. So we'd actually been infusing it in high-performing teams or women's leadership or coaching. But the very first video where I just said it's know yourself, trust yourself, be yourself was so vulnerable for me. Like scary. So too was putting on the website. And I think that's with lots of things because I already I think this plays out with everything as well. So I already think that there's a barrier where lots of people will be like, well, I'm already competent.
Yes.
Just like there's barriers for lots of things.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's not the point. I can still solve that, but that's not the point. This is your experience of the world that's like, oh, I don't think, I think this will be most helpful. I think the way you're able to be happy and succeed starts with this core.
Yes.
So my role is actually to do what I most believe in sharing that message. And the people who are most ready to hear it will.
Yes.
That doesn't mean I'm not going to be confrontational, by the way, which is, I think about going to the doctors or something tomorrow. If you go to the doctors and you're like, oh, I've got a flu.
Yes.
You self-diagnose.
Yes.
Well, I feel like I'm the doctor on the other side being like, You don't know you've got the flu.
Hang on.
Yeah. So my job is also to be like, yes, oh, senior, polished person who doesn't think it's about confidence.
Yes.
It is actually showing up, because when I just talked to you, you think it's different talking to 1,000 people and then going into a boardroom. Like, you're kind of nervous. You don't package it to me as I'm not confident.
Yes.
You ask for strategies and tips to do it. But that's because in your mind, you don't believe in yourself enough.
Yes.
Even though it's the exact same skill. So what I give to you and what I think I should give to you that would help you most long term is that.
Yes.
And I think that's the same for everyone. We can all just like share this and then go, okay, maybe I'll nudge you a bit if I think. And there's another part where I'm like, all right, well, that wasn't for you.
Yeah.
That kind of helps me.
Yeah, it's very helpful
It helps
for me too.
for the people-pleasing piece.
Yeah, very good for me too.
Because it's like training. You've got to get everyone. You don't.
Yeah. Yeah, that was always a killer for me, particularly when I was a contract trainer, because every eval had to be good.
Of course.
Very limiting if every eval has to be good.
Yeah.
I remember chasing after one guy one day and I said, I think you've marked the wrong end of the scale, because I was so used to getting good results. He goes, I did not mark the wrong end. I go, what happened? And he goes, you were teaching me about communication like I was a 12-year-old. I'm a university graduate. And I said, 1,000 apologies. I will keep your one and think about it. How awkward. But that point you made, it's not for everyone. So the way that it works for me is if I flip it around and I think of who has made a difference to me over the years, and I think of particular people who have spoken about different subjects, and it has sounded exactly perfect for what I needed to hear, like magical, right?
Oh, yeah.
It actually works for me to take on what you're saying in reverse, because, of course, there's many people who are wonderful that haven't called to me.
Yeah.
That doesn't make anything wrong with them.
Yeah.
I'm just the jigsaw piece for that voice that... So there's two elements. One is taking on, it's what you're saying is meant to be right. And then connected to that, something that Danielle's helped me understand is around, her learnings from one of the courses she did, where it's if you're doing what brings you joy and expressing yourself from your heart, that is the most helpful thing you can do. Oh, what a great outcome. Like, I love sitting in here. I love doing the podcast. I love talking to Danielle. When I'm driving here, I go do the podcast. I'm nothing but happy.
Yeah.
And then she told me, if I'm happy, I'm going to make a difference.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
How fantastic.
And by the way, we will still doubt that along the way. Good day, bad day. So I think it's okay to be like, I'm doing this, which I do. Like, I love and breathe what we're doing. That has a plus minus to it too. And it'll still mean that I question things.
Yeah.
I feel like that acceptance part of it is really good too.
Yeah, I would agree that things aren't absolute. So, can be a little bit black and white. It's changing a little bit, but certainly that I'm so happy I'll never be sad again. I'm so sad I'll never be happy again. I've been very committed to both of those.
Yeah.
I had a boyfriend years ago before my husband, and he used to say to me, he was a very level sort of fellow emotionally, and he used to say to me, Tamara, when you're happy, I'm so jealous of you. No one gets happy like you, but when you're sad, I'm very glad I'm me. Because he said, my ups and downs are like this, yours are like, I mean, I haven't been diagnosed with bipolar, but at times it's like, maybe I could just go and check that one out, because it has been so strong, positive or negative.
Yeah.
But what's happening in recent times, as I sort of stabilise more and mature more and look at things in a different way and have the support I have, the highs and lows are softening. So I'm still someone that will feel high.
Yeah.
And as a friend of mine, we worked for a fellow in Chile when we did teaching English as 40-year-olds, not 20-year-olds. And the fellow that owned the business called Teaching English Chile, it was a very easy one to find, he's American, called Bruce. I love him very much. And then when he was happy for us or for himself, he'd say, I am elated. And I love that term. I'm often elated, right? Because something has touched me or I've been excited. I'm very excitable.
Yeah.
But then if I get off,
too.
right?
Yeah.
When we first spoke, I had that moment. I was like, I can really relate to Kim. And it was when we were a bit joyous, right?
Yeah.
We were having a good time and we were enjoying meeting one another, and we both had that joie de vivre, right?
Yeah.
That love of life. I think that's the thing I find most hard to understand when people don't have that. They're like, yeah, whatever. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness, that's such an unusual perspective to have. Like, it's so different.
It is. Why do you think that is?
That they have that, whatever.
Yeah.
My instant guess is it's better to be sort of like sort of a bit more middling so you don't get disappointed, like they might have been hurt or had lots of disappointments.
Yeah.
The people I know that are most like, or don't get excited, which I've been told a few times, I think they sort of got excited and it didn't work out too well, or they've had a lot of disappointments.
Yeah.
When you were talking about your mum before, I was thinking about I have a really strong importance on mothering. I think we have quite a big job as mothers. And when I think about the people in my life who are actually pretty wonderful people but have had particularly difficult mums, the impact of that in their life has been extraordinarily hard, particularly around their self-belief.
Yeah.
So when I hear you say, my mum said, you're special, I've got you, babe.
Yeah.
The solidity of that, it's a real gift.
Yeah.
Thanks, Kim's mum. Good job.
Yeah.
Because you took it and you used it and you're you, and like you said, you've got Kevin, you're a human being, but it's a nice basis to start working from.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not just a nice basis. We're just not set up to think about these things. You know that feeling if you ever look back on your resume?
Yes.
Which, you don't do it for years, right? No. And you have to dust it off or whatever, and and you look at it. Have you ever had that feeling when when you read it, you're like, oh, it's kind of impressive.
Yes.
Like you get kind of good. I think about that and how abnormal it is that we don't have that as part of our life when every single day it's like reading the opposite of resume. So you mentioned media. It's in news.
Yeah.
It's inside my head.
Yeah.
It's in the organisation. It's built in for me to be like, I should have.
Yes.
Like that word should, I really clock in my mind all the time.
Yeah.
To do the opposite.
Yeah.
So you'd have to balance it out with both, and we kind of put on this world without a playbook about these things, and yet everything's like
right?
Yeah.
It's fascinating too, because if you think of the development of AI for our children's education and what will become careers and all the rest, hopefully there will be some space for some of these human skills, soft skills, emotional skills to come into schools as well as parenting.
Yeah.
Because the thought that these children, some of them are, depending on the school, and schools are getting better at doing it. But largely, certainly of my generation, we weren't taught how to be emotionally intelligent or how to love ourselves or how to communicate usefully. It was like, okay, figure it out as best you can, and we're all wobbling around doing the best we can. And, when I think of some of my clients, I've referred on here before, I've got some clients who are wonderful, very good-hearted, as I believe most people just are actually, but they're not particularly good at communicating, and they don't have particularly high emotional intelligence. So when they bump into another person with those same deficits, they have a terrible time together.
Yeah.
And I know them both, and I know what they're like, and I'm like, oh, no, that doesn't need to happen at all. But because of this lack of ability, lack of skill, lack of sometimes education, lack of communication skills, what a hard path for them. Plus, we're talking about this generational trauma, where they've come from, what they've learnt. I have this great wish that it's an element of life that we're able to help the generations coming through with. Because,
me too.
We're lucky. The job we do is one of the irreplaceable jobs, the people stuff. I was listening to a professor about it when we first started Discern. It was very good timing because, as you know, new business, very exciting. How's this going to go? And I remember him saying, what are the skills of the future going to be? And his biggest one is people that communicate with other people, because a lot of the technical stuff, right?
Yeah.
It's like, what's gonna be,
Yeah.
But this people stuff, the relief it would bring the world if people could get better at what you're talking about, like being gentle with themselves and understanding their worth, and then being able to talk to someone else in a way that came from love and understanding. Be like heaven.
Yeah, and the fourth part of that, I like how you said all of that, is I can only think of it as like a simple cheerleader, like this sense that somebody else believes in you, somebody else is like, oh no, that's not you. That's not just you. Everybody has that.
Yeah.
Somebody who like normalizes it. And I think all of us are looking for that sense, and we get nervous before we have to perform in whatever format. So the way you parent, where you go into a meeting, something that feels a bit different, but really it's not.
Yeah.
If someone's just in your ear in that moment, I think our role is a very lucky role that you get to give that to someone. But it also tells you how important it is, how much it's needed, and yet we don't learn about it.
No.
And there's nothing out there that, in fact, the people who get told they need it are the ones that's like, oh, it's like a deficit. Like you're always supposed to push through. Yeah. Instead of like, oh, no, you're supposed to recharge and you're supposed to be intentional. And someone else, you should get some self-belief. And how can you get it all by yourself?
Yeah. We're social animals, and we get, like you said, every day we're bombarded with where we're not doing good enough, supposedly, whether it be the manipulation of advertising or social media or media itself. And then, to have this opposite. I remember practicing. I'm a naturally grateful person, but I've also got better at noticing. And they say when you notice things that you're grateful for, more of those things will show up. And I definitely noticed that. I'm like, love that, and I love that, and I love, right? And then the
like wearing glasses.
Yeah.
And I feel like, you put on the glasses and then now everything's got a glare on it. Yeah.
Right? Yeah, it's so cool. And I remember, I don't know where I learnt it from, but adding in the piece at night where you say 3 things that you're grateful for and what was it about you that made it so.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, it's very cool, and it's very hard for people to do.
Yes.
I find it hard to do myself, and my coachees find it hard to do.
Yeah.
So they might be able to do the gratitudes. Often they won't.
Yeah.
They will sometimes. And then when I say, did you do the bit about what was it about you that made it so? And they're like, I didn't do that bit.
That's like a misfunction with the world, right? So whoever you believe in came up with the world. They're like, here you go, it's beautiful, it's amazing, and they put all these people on. And then there's this weird thing where like, but you don't get to celebrate yourself.
No.
And you can't quite follow your potential.
No.
Like so many people percentage-wise don't actually find their passion and follow that as a role. And then when you do that, whatever you do, because, again, something squished along the way, or somebody says, oh, you won't be able to make that transition.
Yes.
Which, and so unless you've had enough of, oh, I am good messaging, you can't.
Yes.
And then the last piece is, and whatever you're doing in the world, like this magical world, there's all these, it's like having signs in front of you that tell you, well, you're not really that good anyway. Like it's absolutely not supposed to be that way in my mind.
Yeah.
Like it's just not. So, and I picture like aliens coming down and being like, oh, you've got miracle land here. And then they see how we all live and they're like, what the hell happened here? Like, what, you didn't get the right playbook? So
we did. Look, we did it.
Well, like, we did it. Like, why isn't everyone happy and whatever? And yet it's quite simple in my mind. If you just knew some of this, then you'd navigate it better. It would be lighter.
Yes.
And of course, knowing it is not like nirvana. It's everyday little practices, right? And the more you practice it, it's ironic to confidence anyway, because you have to practice more and more things, which means you're uncomfortable,
right,
to get better at it,
right.
Then it's like the grateful at the evening, which I love that. We do the 3 things. I'm going to add yours on. It's the celebrating, like every day, the messaging. I just feel like there's all these little daily things then that you do to navigate your confidence. I feel like that there's literally, of course, what I talk about all the time. Yeah. But first, you would have to be convinced of how important it is.
Yes.
Like the positive, negative, like whatever. You'd have to have this, it's not, And I suppose part of that is me connecting like performance in the world or whatever you want, it's tied to this. So why don't you just intentionally build it? Build it in habits.
I think what would be a very useful tie-in is, what is it that you most want? Confidence is going to allow you to have that. And that might be not a very big dramatic dream. It might be like when I think of one of my friends who suffers quite a lot, when they wish for what they wanted, the word was contentment. And they only want contentment. Imagine, as you're talking about confidence, you say, what do you most want? Doesn't have to be big and sparkly. It's true. Your dream.
Yes.
Because if you said to me, Tamara, what do you want? And I said whatever it was, say I said peace in myself, you go, well, the confidence is going to be the key to that.
Yeah.
So it can work for shy people that have, simple dreams that are as beautiful as big dreams, but it's their one. You made me think of when you said, we know that most people don't live out their dreams, and there's one of the reality shows, something like maybe Selling New York, and there's a fellow that owns a real estate agency on there, and he's a social media and reality TV guru, right?
Yeah.
Ryan Serhant. So he's fantastic to watch. I get to see New York. I get to see I love reality shows. I love the psychology of the setup and the fiction versus reality and where they are and the beauty. And remind me to talk to you about Martin Seligman's character traits when I finish this bit. He says when he was 10, his grandfather's driving him along and he says, see that cemetery? And the little kid Ryan goes, yep. And he goes, do you know who's in there? Artists, poets, painters, writers. And he goes, but none of them are there because they never lived out their dreams. And he reckons as a 10-year-old, he went, that's not going to be me. Most of us have a pivotal bad moment when we realise, I was told that and I never created.
Yeah.
He had the opposite. He's like, that's not going to be me. And he created this empire, right?
Yeah.
Whatever the truth is to it. I said, remind me about Martin Seligman, but lucky it's one of those times I remembered it myself. Yeah. The positive psychology guy, right, who was famous for his own lack of positivity that he talks about quite openly. But he talks about these character strengths, and there's a free test you can do through University of Pennsylvania, I think he's based in, and you go online and you look up VIA character strengths, and it basically says what are your things that, you know, are a strength of yours you can use in your life from this positive point of view. Anyway, my number one character strength is appreciation of beauty and excellence. And as soon as I learnt it, I understood much more about myself. I understood why I love travelling. I understood why I love Danielle's house. I understood why I love my husband because he's got a beautiful face, you know, and all of these different elements. I'm like, I really do appreciate beauty and excellence. You know, I always like the top sports person because I just marvel at their, you know, Roger, you know, have unpure thoughts, you know.
I'll have to look that up. I wonder if that was...
VIA character strengths, and connected to that, how do I use that to get what I want, or where can my confidence come from in that? What is the drive, whether the dream's big or little? And then, of course, as I said earlier, people being honest about what they want and understanding that actually most people won't wish you ill. They may not actively support you if it's not their jam, but a lot of the fear is here, right? Not there. Yeah. Even though we project it there, it's actually like, they're not even thinking about you.
Exactly.
I love that one.
I like that one too.
They're not even thinking about you. It's like, what the hell? I thought they were thinking about me 24/7.
Yeah.
I haven't even popped into their mind.
Yeah, that's so funny. My mum told me that when I was a teenager. You know, when you're a teenager, and I've got a teenager now too, you know, you walk into a room and you're so self-conscious. Yeah. And she, you know, she was literally like, oh, as if anyone's looking at you, please.
Oh, and the tone is perfect because it's a wake up.
And I do remember feeling a bit lighter, as in, oh, yeah, like, really? Everybody? It's a bit irrational that would happen. Doesn't mean you don't have those things play out,
but the tone really works as well. Like, oh, please, everyone's thinking about you, and you go, oh, you're right, Mum.
I tried that. I'm not sure it works with my boys in the same way, but
right?
You know, same type of ethos.
Yeah, it's wonderful. It's the freedom of it, right? So you're doing this work. You've got your business. People can tell us a little bit more about, if I wanted to work with you can I work with you as an individual? Do I need to be a business? How is Tall Poppies set up, and how can people access you? Because now I'm on the bandwagon and I want you to be able to impact as many people as possible. So how are we going to do it?
Oh, beautiful. Because we've got a creating 1 million tall poppies in the world dream.
Okay, perfect.
That's when you said, what do you want to talk about first? I was like, oh, I desperately want to talk about that first.
Oh, you were so patient. Thank you.
But it's also, you know, when you are, you know, when you're leading a business or whatever, it's nice to pause for a second too, because there's a beautiful personal part of me. It's not all the business.
Yes.
Right? So I try and balance that too.
I don't want to be critical,
passion.
But I think 1 million is a little bit conservative.
Oh, thank you, dear.
But that's okay. That's okay.
It could just be 1 billion after this.
Okay, okay. We'll start with 1 million.
Exactly.
Okay.
So, of course, yes, you can work with us individually. Once upon a time, we just had long-term solutions. So we do confident performing teams. We make teams better. We have women's leadership programs. We do executive coaching, and that was all within organisations. So obviously that works amazing.
Yes.
But also what I'm trying to do in the world is have everyone have this knowledge and tools and everything.
Yeah.
So individually, of course, we could still do coaching. Quite simply, we have something online that you can do that'll just make you feel more confident.
Oh, nice.
And of course, it's about insight. So that's called a confident leadership online training.
Okay.
I know not everyone's like, oh, I can't wait to do something online, but that was our way of first touching everybody. Yeah. So really it makes you reflect, because I'm such a big journaler. It's like an hour, 10-minute little exercises whenever you feel like it, and you're going to get information about yourself. Of course, it's about know, trust, be, so that you actually feel better and you'll figure out how to use that at work. Yeah. Like, I think that's step one. I really do.
I don't particularly like online stuff, and I love the idea of that being online because it's accessible, personal. I can get it. I
Yeah.
can do it and then
Yeah.
I can go, right, what am I going to do from here? So
Yeah.
if anything's going to be online, I think that's the perfect first piece because it takes away a little bit of the concern. But what if I'm in a room? I'll feel a bit nervous. You know what I mean?
True.
So, yeah.
So
Good.
that's for everybody.
Awesome.
I would love everyone to just follow us because we do thought leadership and all these posts, and I make random videos in my garden all the time on these topics.
I follow you. It's very helpful.
Just so they can be thinking about themselves more, their own development, be more intentional by watching some of the thought leadership we're putting out there.
So do you put it, you've got Tall Poppies as a website?
Yes, so you can get confident leadership training. It says guided learning, first page of our website.
Okay.
Thank you for asking.
No worries. Is it tallpoppiesleadership.com?
Oh, the website. It's Tall Poppies, all one word,
Yes.
.us.
Okay.
Because we set it up first when I was still living in New York.
Tall Poppies, all one word, .us. And then if I want to watch you, I've seen you on LinkedIn. Are you also on Instagram? I'm quite old and Luddite-ish. So.
Yes. Exactly. I'm a little bit the same. So LinkedIn, the Tall Poppies LinkedIn page has all our thought leadership. So follow us there.
Okay, awesome.
That's the other one. And of course, organisations, which we do a lot. Yeah, anything that's women's leadership programs. If you want something long term that makes a difference.
Okay.
Or if you're a HR individual, what am I going to do to make the team more performing, or how am I going to create belonging, employee retention for women?
Yes.
I've got the C-suite are either high performing or their actual team, or a message like keynotes is an avenue to just introduce an audience to let's look at your accountability and ownership and how you feel about yourself. That starts with confident leadership.
I've become keener on keynotes because arrogantly I feel like I want to get my message to more people.
Yeah.
And there's more people in that room.
And you'd be exactly
right.
Yeah, exactly. So you immediately more people start thinking about it. And you'd be great at it.
Thank you.
Well,
I've also got a different plan for you if you haven't already thought of it. And you have Tall Poppies coaches and they work under your banner, but they use your methodology. So then that you can get to the million in terms of you're doing your corporate work, and that's good numbers, big numbers. But then we need to help all these women like myself, and then you can access more of them because they have Tall Poppies accreditation as a part of their coaching.
Yeah, that is part of my dream.
Hey!
And we have
picked it up through the ether.
Exactly. Yeah, we have one in New York already.
Hey.
Somebody that I used to work with for years. So that methodology, but I think that's how to make it globally. Have people who are sharing the methodology, who deeply believe in it, and are supporting people. Same with where I dream about apps. I dream about people being in different cities, and one's on the I don't know, maybe this is because I did it. In the gym, on the running machine, and they're getting all prepped for a meeting or something, and they pull up an app, and there's all of our Tall Poppies confident leadership and tips and strategies very practically before you go into a meeting.
Nice.
And same. Then they wear their socks, their stand tall socks before they, step into something as a parent or whatever. Yeah, so all these embedding things around the world. Yeah.
We'll have to talk more offline, or this will drag out for too long because I'll be like, what about this? Can we do that?
Yeah.
But it's really inspiring, and personally, because it's been such a journey for me, I can really feel the difference it'll make. And I particularly like when people deny they've got confidence issues, but actually that's driving a lot of their defensive behaviours or their closed off behaviours or their lack of vulnerability. So I'm going to keep on going, sharing what's true for me and being willing to be vulnerable. I shared with Danielle on Friday 50/50 that I had the most beautiful comment come through to me on LinkedIn, someone that I'd trained previously, and through training her, she knew my name, and then she started listening to this. And she made one of those comments that I would have made to someone that had inspired me, where what I say is perfect for her. When you go, how on earth did you know how to say that? Because that's exactly what I needed to hear. And I got that comment, and I said to her, I said to Danielle, my gift to that lady for being so generous as to send me that is I'm going to question myself less based on what she said. I'm going to take that compliment, take what you've said, say this is going to be useful for who it's useful for, and we're going to keep on going with joy and love and have a good time.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, me too.
Woo!
Beautiful.
It's so cool. We're so lucky. Go us.
We are.
Is there anything we haven't talked about that you wanted to mention today? Is there any other way people can find you that we haven't mentioned? Have we missed anything to put you on the spot?
I think you can. I think the website, online. I'm going to be at the Women in Leadership. Oh, of course, the conference we're doing.
Oh, cool.
If anyone happens to hear this before then, come and see us. That's the 26th, 27th of November.
Like we will just be out before that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That's like
what
very
are you doing?
logistical.
What are you doing there?
I am doing a fireside chat with the CEOs. So that'll be interesting, like facilitating
cool.
that. And, it's just wonderful energy being in those conferences too.
I'm doing the last gig of the 2 days.
I did see that. But that's all right because your energy is going to be high and wonderful.
It's not a surprise because we actually talked about it with the organisers and they said, we want you to be last because of your energy. And I said, I would like not to be last, thank you. And then we looked at the list and pretty much everyone else is a CEO and I'm like, thank you, I will go last.
Yeah.
So I've got my sparkly jacket to help me and everyone else stay awake, right? Yeah, cool. I'll see you there. And then anyone who'd like to come along who hears this, Women in Leadership, and you can find it on LinkedIn. You can literally Google Women in Leadership, 26th, 27th. Does that sound right?
Yes. Which is, run by
November.
It's the UN that sponsored that one. So
that's
it's
right.
a certain one.
They're getting better and better too. They're very good 2 days. And I've noticed each one I go to, the lineup's better, the speakers are better, the concept's better, the audience is better.
Yeah.
It's a good room to be in.
Yeah.
Thank you. See you then, if not before.
See you then.
Bye.